What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and I unfortunately find myself in a situation that perhaps some of you have found yourself in. The D&D party that I've had for the past 6 years has been diminished down to just a DM and 2 players. Now, we've been playing with a 3-player party for quite a while, and it's worked just fine, but unfortunately, we're nearing the end of the campaign, and then, unfortunately, one of those players, due to, real-life circumstances, had to step away, and rather than just ending the game period or having to have somebody else play his character, we decided we wanted to preserve the natural ending of the campaign to have when we have everybody together. So then we were like, well, what do we do in the meantime? We could just take a break and not do anything. We could try to run a different campaign. We could whatever we're gonna do. So the one of my players was going to DM an interim campaign anyway between this campaign, the main campaign, and the second one. And he said, well, let me see what I can come up with how we're going to handle 2 players. And that's kind of where we got into, we come up with this kind of conundrum of, do we dumb down all of the encounters to try to balance them for 2 people? Or do we give the players some sort of boon or ally or something to raise them up so that you can just keep running the game as normal? And what my DM decided on for this was something pretty interesting and unique. It involves dragons, and I think you're going to like it. But before I dive into that, I wanted to talk to you about the sponsor for today's video, Skillshare. If you've been on the internet for a while, and even here on this channel, you're familiar with what Skillshare is. It's an online learning community where there are thousands of different courses where you can learn something new. Teach yourself a skill, better yourself in some way, and they have a variety of different options for you out there. A class that I'm in the process of taking right now is Polish Your Voice Recordings Part 2, Audio Editing for Non-Techie Amateurs by Ron Massa. Now, I am not an audio engineer, and I've only learned what I've learned just through trial and error. So I'd like to learn and better understand how EQ works. I picked up a new microphone. I want to mess around with it and make sure I know what I'm doing. So I'm hoping this will help, and maybe this new campaign that I'm going to talk to you about in a second, maybe we'll release it in podcast form, so audio editing is important. And there's a link in the description, and new for this promotion is, rather than a 2-week free trial of Skillshare Premium, if you click the link in the description, the first 1,000 subscribers who do so get a free month of Skillshare Premium. So take the time while you have it to go out, learn a new skill. Thank you, Skillshare, for sponsoring this video. So how are we going to handle this conundrum we find ourselves in having a 2-player party? Well, there's a couple of different options you could have. One is dumbing the encounters down and having to rebalance things. And we all know challenge rating isn't really balanced anyway. Or you give the party some sort of boon, some serious magic firepower, sidekicks, or something else. So for this campaign, which is going to pretty much be in a silo, my DM decided to tap into the Summoner series of books, which if you haven't read is kind of like an adult Pokemon. It's kind of fun. Or like if you're familiar with an Aragon or the Inheritance cycle, right? So dragons or dragon rider, not necessarily a rider, but we'll get to that. So each of the party members is going to have a dragon companion. The party member gets to kind of work on the color of the dragon is up to the party member to decide. So myself or the other of my fellow players, Celine, we get to pick. The DM's determining a stat block for us to use, and it will be a standard stat block with the exception of switching one stat around, which I'll get to in a second. And then that way we're all, like, one dragon isn't more powerful than the next. We, as the players, are limited to martial characters, but half-casters are still allowed, so like rangers and paladins are allowed. And the kind of way we balance it is the dragons are the full casters. And to represent the sort of mana shared pool of energy that is kind of done in those series, the dragons will be using spell points instead of spell slots. That's an alternative way to handle spells. The closest thing you'll get to replicating a mana, if you will, in 5e. It's in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I did a video on it years ago, but it basically, what's going to happen is the dragon is a full caster, everything except for Warlock, and you pick which one you'd like it to be, and then it has spell points. So in combat, the way it'll work is we haven't figured out the turn mechanics exactly. Does the dragon get its own initiative? Does it act on our turn? Does it act on our turn but immediately after us, depending on how we want to go about that? And then you, as the martial character, have your turn. Your options are you can, with your turn, do whatever it is your class allows you to do, or you can cast spells from the dragon's spell slot, originating from you, using the spell points, kind of drawing on that shared pool of energy, but it uses your spellcasting ability modifier, whatever it would be for that thing. So if you pick that you're going to be, a fighter and you dump intelligence, but your dragon's going to be a wizard, if you go to share the pool of magic and cast from that, it would be an intelligence-based spell, so you'd be at a disadvantage. So it probably makes sense to draw on some sort of shared, stat, whether that be, you put high wisdom and you choose cleric or whatever it is. And it would originate from you. The dragon also gets its turn, and on its turn, it can also use the spell points to do whatever it wants to do, but it also has access to its dragon abilities, right? Breath weapon, which will be a standard set of, we'll know what the stats are for the breath weapon once we finally get that initial stat block. And then it also has its spells. So you're still pulling from the same pool of energy, whether you cast the spells on your turn or the dragon casts the spells on their turn. There's a little bit of back and forth there, and that's kind of how it's going to go. The other benefit is because it's a shared bond, the dragon gets one of the benefits of the martial caster. So say I'm playing a barbarian, my dragon companion would have rage, just like I would. Now, the dragon is essentially a full secondary casting class. They are still getting level ups, they're still getting ability scores and all those things as they go through. They're just kind of we're really only handling the bond with the dragon, as it were, in combat. In roleplay scenarios, so we're not having the two of us just talk to each other constantly, talk to like ourselves, me talking to my dragon, Celine talking to her dragon. Once we kind of build out the personality of it, the DM will sort of handle the roleplay aspect of the dragon. And if you think about in any of those series, the player, the main hero, the antagonist, or the protagonist rather, of the story, doesn't really have control over their dragon or their creature that they have, that they've bonded to. It sort of is its own entity. They work together when they need to, but they have the option to say no to things and choose to do not, and have their own opinion. And that'll be replicated in sort of the DM running it as an NPC outside of combat. In combat, we'll be taking care of it and dealing with the strategy stuff, that the DM can focus on the monsters. I thought that this was a really interesting concept. I don't know how it's going to work. We're going to learn and try it together. Probably by the time you're watching this video, I think you'll be seeing this on Wednesday, we will have streamed Session 0 last night on Tuesday. We're still trying to figure out if we want to stream it to Twitch or YouTube, so, you might end up seeing it. But regardless of where we end up streaming it, it will be uploaded to Nerd Immersion Plays, which is our secondary channel where we have hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of D&D gameplay. If you're looking to watch something like that, it's all over there on Nerd Immersion Plays. You can go check that out over there. So let me know what your thoughts are. I'm very curious to see how this dragon concept will work. Like I said, it obviously depends on what class you pick. So if you say pick Paladin, it would make sense for you to pick like Bard or Sorcerer as your dragon type, so you're both synergizing charisma. Or if you're choosing a wisdom-based class, choose cleric or druid, or intelligence and then wizard. Me personally, I'm leaning towards ranger. I know that sounds crazy coming from me, but I soft released my ranger fix at the end of one of my very long live streams that I did. I kind of debuted it for the folks in the chat, and it was received very well. And because this is kind of like a low-stakes campaign, it's not something we're planning to do super long-term. It's just until the regular kind of campaign resumes. I thought, what the hell, this will be a great opportunity for me to playtest my Ranger fix. And I'll likely end up going my fixed version of Beastmaster, so I'll not only have an animal companion, but I'll also have a dragon, which is kind of fun for me. So anyway, if you want to see that, that'll be live streamed either, like I said, on Twitch or YouTube. We're figuring that out as we go. And if I can get this audio editing stuff down, we might be releasing it as a podcast as well. So thank you all so much for watching. Be on the lookout for more Nerd Immersion content every day this week and next week. So if you like that kind of stuff, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications. Thank you once again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and I will see you all next time.